Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm going to give just a moment for those of you attending to cycle in, and then we'll get started. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Streamline Internal Administration of Your Company's 401k Plan. We're really glad you joined us this morning. Now, before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive the recording link and slides emailed to you later today. So be on the lookout for that email in your inbox. This webinar will run 50 minutes with 10 minutes Q&A at the end. If you have a question for our presenters, please put it in the Q&A box located in your Zoom toolbar. To find your Zoom toolbar, just hover your mouse over the bottom or top of your screen and it'll pop up. And then look for the Q&A icon. Now I'd like to introduce our presenters. Chris Castro has more than 20 years of financial services experience and specializes in retirement plans with a value of up to $50 million. He was a member of the Transamerica President's Club from 2013 to 2021. He is a chartered retirement planning counselor, a chartered retirement plan specialist, and a certified 401k professional. David Bass is the Special Markets Sales Director, Payroll at Transamerica. In his role, David oversees Transamerica's relationships with payroll and HCM companies, including building platform connectivity to enhance their clients' experience and various business development activities. David joined Transamerica in January 2020 and has 22 years of experience in the retirement plan industry with a major payroll provider. And finally, we have Maria Areola, CPA, and she is a partner in LSL's Audit and Assurance Department and also manages the firm's 401k plan audits department. I'm sure many of you already know her and work with her. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Maria to get the presentation started. Take it away, Maria.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks everyone for being here. We're actually excited to have you here. And before I forget anything, thank you to Jill and Cami and Chris and Dave for being here and having to put up with me. So I really appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. I know that I personally have spoken with a few of you already. As you know, 401k planning season started. And I started to really see which of our clients things are going so smooth for, and some of our clients are not so smooth. And no offense to Transamerica or any of those, one of the first items that I do know is that you got to get on this bus fairly quickly as soon as the year starts, so you can get on their queue to get all of your stuff, especially your census information, your payroll information, your accounting done, so that any of our TPAs get you on the queue, because the longer you wait, the longer it'll be before they prepare your accounting in the draft 5500. As you know, that's what we do. We're actually auditing their work, your work, and the 5500. So in all of that, I started to really working with Chris and with Dave and with Jill, going, okay, what's happening right now? Maybe we should just talk about what we're going to be covering today and what are the challenges. One of the first challenges, obviously, for the plan sponsor, in same here. I'm one of you. We've been audited for the last 4 years, and it's always a fun challenge. First one is the staffing shortage. I find ourselves that everyone is responsible right now for more tasks and more responsibility than you've ever had before. I don't know if it's COVID. I don't know if it's, the $1 billion that came in PPP money. I don't know. The biggest thing is we have a staffing shortage. So we wanted to start with that and say, okay, how are we doing this today? What is my current process? What is am I manually doing some of this? Are things happening in the background that I don't have to be involved? What kind of day-to-day activities? Am I moving data around and all that? So keep in mind, as Chris and Dave go through this next slides, keep in mind biggest pain points, keeping the data accurate. Because if you don't start with good data and it gets to Transamerica's, Fidelity's, or any of the TPA's hands, bad data, I'm auditing bad data. So then basically, if your stuff is not even correct, like I could be looking at the payroll records against the accounting that the TPA has prepared and not be correct. But I don't necessarily find that immediately. It could be down the road. So small problems do snowball into large problems. And some of my clients and some companies are solving these problems so easily. We really have the heart to just say, this is not about selling anything. This is about just telling you what others are doing that's really allowing this process to go. And CPAs, just to let you know, none of us are better than the other. We are just as good as the data that you can give us. So some people can say, oh, my CPA can get this done so much faster. It's really not that way. The biggest part is, what are you giving to us that will make our lives easier? So anyway, that's really what we're covering today. Hopefully it will be a mutual understanding, because I'd love to hear from you. If any of our clients are in this webinar, you know how much we love to help you. So make sure that you speak up and let us know. We would love to give you as much education as we can. And with that, go, Chris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Maria. Thanks for the introduction, and Jill. I appreciate everyone putting this together. We've seen automation really take hold here over the last 5 years, and working in the industry for the last 20 years or so, I've gotten to review thousands and thousands of retirement plans. And in the past, up until the last few years, really when companies were upset or companies were looking to move vendors, it was really about fees, investments, maybe plan design, maybe service. But what we've noticed over the last few years, and I think part of it's COVID, as Maria referenced, but we've noticed a major shift in companies out there looking to request automation to take things off their plate, right? Companies are dealing with a lot less resources right now. They're dealing with business disruption. They're dealing with employees working from all different locations in the work from home environment, right? There's been a major shift in how companies have had to do business. And the retirement plan has been pushed to the back end, even though there are a lot of risks in the retirement plan. So what our mandate's been with a lot of organizations is they've come to us and asked us if we could help them lighten their load from a day-to-day administration perspective. What things can we take off our plate that allow us to focus on our core competencies, right? And what we've been able to find is we've been able to give companies hours of their time back. We've been able to give them some of their employees that really are dedicated to working on the retirement plan. They've been able to focus on other areas, whatever that may be, whatever the business really needs. Many companies out there don't have a full-time or a very large HR staff, right? They just don't have the resources to dedicate to the retirement plan. And not only doing the retirement plan, but also doing it correctly. So with that, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. My phone just started ringing. Sorry about that, guys. With that, I just wanted to point out some of the different things that can be automated here. Maria and I were talking before the meeting, and we thought it would be a great idea if you could pick one or two of these items and put them in the chat and let us know if they're really pain points for you guys. So first and foremost, we'll take a look. Investment choices are some of the plan sponsor duties that you have to deal with. Plan design, trustee duties, fiduciary responsibilities. One of the ones that we're really going to focus on today is payroll. In addition to payroll and getting the payroll uploaded, we talk about hardship withdrawals, terminations and loans, dealing with all types of transactions that require moving money, tracking eligibility, which is important, dealing with required minimum distributions, rollovers, and annual employee notices, which is a big one and with heavy lifting. Some other things that we see, we see that it's very important that companies really dive into ex-employees on the plans and forcing employees out of the plans. That takes a lot of heavy lifting. But all of these different things are things that we can actually offload for you and automate. And really, in the retirement plan space today, we can knock all of those responsibilities. And this list that we have on the plan sponsor duties is a little bit abbreviated. There's actually a lot more behind that. But we can shrink that down to only 3 or 4 items that you have to deal with day to day. And really, some of those you can outsource as well. So if any of these things really stand out to you, let us know, put it in the chat, and we'd be happy to discuss and really bring more, shed more light on those for you specifically if you'd like. So with that, I'll kick it off.
And I would like to make a note. Don't write down that your employees don't enter their time. That is absolutely nothing we can do about that. We all have the same problem. If your employees are not putting in their time correctly or even entering their time, it's the cross we all have to bear. And I have to say, it is definitely so difficult because if that payroll information gets in there correctly, then all of our jobs will be so much easier. But we'd love it if you write down the few things that would make your life a little bit easier. And Chris, I like to do on your to-do list shrinks. This will not be covering, but remember, we've had seminars before about investment choices. Like for example, for LSL, we partner with our financial advisor where they help us take that responsibility and help us, not just help us, but literally they're co-trustees almost. So those are the things that are very, very helpful. Any type of duties like that. I know that the third-party administrators actually will also help you with the fiduciary part of it and the accounting part of it. Not everybody knows that. And yes, does it cost money? Yes, but it's not that much. It's like less than 5 basis points. That the reality is it really can be a huge time saver, not just necessarily a time saver. For me, it's peace of mind. Knowing that I'm not the one that is ultimately the only one that's sitting there with that responsibility that's on my shoulders. And I have an amazing group that's smart and can handle it. That's huge. So I know we're talking about just a few things, but remember, it's way bigger than that. There is an absolute way that it can be a turnkey for you to do all of these 401k plan audits. There really is. And not just the audit, but just the everyday running of it. Anyway, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, absolutely. I think all the things on the right-hand side are things that we can address. On the left-hand side, we're really targeting and focusing on your administrative responsibilities day to day. And that's where we can automate. So with that, I'll kick it over to David Bass on our team to talk about some more information with regard specifically to the payroll integration.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Chris and Maria, for that introduction. And I'm excited to be with the audience today. And I really just thought, just to kind of break this out and give you a high-level overview, we're going to talk about literally just what is payroll integration and what type of data are we looking to exchange between your payroll vendor or your payroll software and your current retirement plan provider. What is a 180 integration or a one-way integration versus a 360 or a bi-directional exchange of data, and what are the advantages of those different configurations? I'm going to show you a list of some common payroll vendors and just speak a little bit about how you can interact with these and how you might approach them and some of the dialogue that you would have with these vendors if you're interested in further automating or streamlining the movement of this data. And then certainly we're going to leave some time for some question and answer, and we'll cover any additional administrative items that might be on your mind today. So with that, I wanted to start and just foundationally speak a little bit about what type of data are we talking about. And look, it's no secret that the payroll data is the fuel that drives your entire retirement plan. So when I look at this, I bucket this data into 4 key areas. The first is all of your employee census data, which, from a security standpoint, this is all the personally identifiable information, or PII. And this is the type of data that's got to be handled with kid gloves very securely. So you think about employees' names, their addresses, social security numbers are a part of that, dates of birth, dates of hire, rehire dates, email addresses are becoming increasingly important. With many plans and plans that are more customized, we see a variety of different data points that are also collected on these files and on integrations that we see come in from our clients. So the employee census data is critical. Now, one of the pitfalls that I have seen with a lot of clients and working with these integrations and data movements is maybe sending to your provider an incomplete list or an incomplete census. I've seen clients send only full-time employees and not part-time employees, or decide to send only employees that are participating and not send non-participating employees. And as your service provider, and I'm sure your auditor, it is critical that all employees are reported and that all of that information gets transferred to your providers. So that
Dave, I have one thing to say about that real quick, of course. Some of the people that are taking care of the 401k are either CPAs or HR directors, and they know their stuff. The guys, you're listening to this, you know your stuff. So you don't know necessarily what the TPA is asking you to put in there. So just from experience, to let you know, give them everything but the kitchen sink and let them figure it out. That's what you pay for. Don't do anything more that you don't have to. Let the providers figure it out. Especially if you have more than one company, especially if you have your own payroll, that you do your own payroll in-house. That is a huge to-do when you do, it's a tough one. But I'm here to tell you that there are programs that you can take your payroll information that your IT guys can do, or even the payroll company, being able to transfer it into a file that's workable and being able to transfer all of that stuff electronically all the time. So just because you do your own payroll does not make you less desirable to do all of this. You know what I mean? And more than anything, give it to them. Don't fix anything, don't do anything. But I do warn you, read it once they have it. Look at that compliance testing, that little compliance testing, super important. And you're looking at literally the eligible participants, because that could take you from not having to do an audit to having to do an audit. One of the biggest things that we go through is when we get a new client. In fact, Jill and I had one just yesterday, and we said, I don't think they need an audit. And you have to understand that those are, like Dave says, this is where the the buck stops, right here in the payroll. I said that backwards. So it must be Spanglish. Okay, I'm going to let you go, David. I'll be quiet.
great point. I think everybody caught that. Well, look, continuing on, the payroll data is the obvious stuff, compensation for employees, hours worked, all of their participants' contributions, broken down by pre-tax or Roth or catch-up contribution, loan repayments to the plan, any type of match or other employer contribution that you might be funding each pay period. So that is key and critical data again. And as it was just mentioned, getting all of that data for both participating and non-participating employees is critical. Now, these other two buckets of data, these contribution rate type data and loan data, this is typically information that is tracked by your provider. So in the case of Transamerica clients, this is information we track. So when an employee comes to our website and they enroll, they might select a contribution percentage that they want coming out of each paycheck, or a flat rate. Or a lot of plans these days have an auto enrollment feature and an auto escalation feature. The key point that I'm making here is this is all data that has an impact back in your payroll environment and has got to be communicated back to someone so that payroll can be updated. And then the same thing with loan data. If your plan provides for loans, that is key and critical data as your employees take those loans, that the payments are being accurately reflected within payroll, and those loan repayments are made. Now, in the case of an integration, and really what we're talking about here is, how do we remove this audience, the plan sponsors or your designated administrators or your HR staff? How do we remove you from being in the position of being that broker of data, as I like to say, and how can we automate this process between your payroll software or your payroll vendor and your providers. So it's doable. We do this all the time. And the typical method of communication between these platforms is some type of highly secure or encrypted file exchange, or some type of API connection or plugin. And all of the providers have some type of different configuration, Transamerica included there. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to start with what most people are very familiar with, and it's a one-way or a 180-degree integration. And I thought to paint the picture, before I really dive into what this 180 integration is all about, if you think about what the manual process is, right? So if you go through a typical payroll cycle, someone in your organization is going to process your payroll, or it could be processed through your payroll vendor. But then what happens is someone's got to produce a report, and they've got to pull that out of the software, and they've usually got to put it in some type of file format, usually an Excel type file. That file is most often stored on someone's desktop computer or in a shared file somewhere. Then you turn around and you log into your record keeper's website, and then you upload that file into your record keeper's website. A few comments that I want to make about that is that, first of all, in a manual environment, someone's got to remember to do the job. If that person that is responsible for it happens to be on PTO who does it, or what if you have turnover, in that department, and that delegated admin is no longer an employee of yours? Is there redundancy to ensure that the data gets communicated to your record keeper? The next is, what about the human interaction that's involved there? This is a security issue. So not saying that someone, on anybody's staff would do this, but anytime you open the door to human engagement or the ability to manipulate data between these platforms, it is always a security issue, and it opens the door for potential manipulation. So heard of instances, haven't experienced it firsthand, but maybe someone increasing a contribution for one participant on the file and offsetting that contribution to another participant on the file. So it looks like the control totals are the same, but when in fact, more money could be going to one person than it should. And then the last piece is, again, on that PII, or that personally identifiable information, are there security protocols in place so that only the correct designated people are handling that PII? And then once those files are produced and generated, are they being disposed of properly so that those files do not land in the wrong hands and that data does not go to anyone who shouldn't see it? So anyway, I just wanted to cover that manual process, and I think the pitfalls are certain and obvious there. But with a 180 integration, the way that these integrations work is that as you process a payroll with your current payroll vendor or through your software, the software or the vendor will automatically produce an integration file, and it will contain all of that employee census data, and it will contain all of the payroll data. And that file is securely delivered directly to the record keeper. So again, it bypasses all human involvement. All that you need to do as a plan sponsor is to ensure that your payroll records are up to date, the employee information is accurate, and that you process payroll. So pretty simple process. And again, it just takes a lot of that human interaction out of the way. But I've kind of spoken to a lot of this, just about the one-way data transfer and what that means. But one of the things that that you'll find, and if you're really exploring these 180 integrations and what this looks like, is what happens to the data when it lands at the record keeper, And in the case, I'll just give you a scenario. In the case of Transamerica, what we do is we will notify our clients when we receive this data, and we can do one of two things with that data when it arrives. We can just notify you and just tell you that, hey, we have received an integration file from your payroll vendor, and it is available for your review and approval. The reason we do that is that some clients may want to have a window of opportunity to catch an error if they've processed a payroll and they realize, oops, there was an error in that payroll. I hope my 401k provider doesn't ingest that data. So there's a window of opportunity there. The second reason they might do this is maybe they want to give us specific funding instruction. So when the file lands, they could choose a bank account. They could utilize money that's in some type of forfeiture, account within the plan, and they could use that to offset the funding obligation for the file. But the other option, when clients really get up and running with this, with this integration, is simply to say, hey, as a provider, when you get my file, as long as everything is in good order, we just want you to automatically process it, automatically just debit our account by ACH, and send us a confirmation of what happened. And in that case, that's exactly what we do. We would instruct and adjust that data. My hunch is that most providers would have a very, very similar feature here. But one key point that I want to make before I get off this slide is that the payroll system is your system of record for all of this employee data, whether it's payroll data or census data. And in a properly configured integration, all of this data will write to your record keepers platform. So in the case of Transamerica, our system automatically gets seeded when new employees are reported on an integration file, or if a change is keyed in to the payroll environment for an employee, maybe they've changed an address, or you've had some type of update, maybe a termination date or a rehire date, things that might drive some type of activity in our record keeping environment, we would automatically pick that information up as a byproduct of the integration. And there is no need to duplicate key that information into our environment. So anyway, with that said,
so David, I really like what you just said. So everything is depending on how you input the information into the payroll program. And I understand that. So what you're saying is there are ways to have a mid-step to just, if let's say somebody left during the period in payroll forgot to put in there the date of termination, so that when that file automates and gets in there, they could choose to say, well, we're going to have the HR manager look at this. It's one thing to look at something and spend 5 minutes reviewing it. And there's another thing where you have time entering and you have hands in there. So I like that. I didn't even know that that was available, but I like it to be able to have that breather between one and the other. To me as an auditor, it's even better because now I have segregation of duties. I actually have a person that's not entering, but can see, and I bet you that that report can be done without having social security numbers or something that you wouldn't want to be sending an email out. Correct. And all that. So I like that. Another thing that I love about this convenience of this is the Department of Labor. They have a rule for making these contributions within a 15-day period. That's what they've actually written down. But what they don't say is the next sentence is, or as administratively fast as possible, which means that it's not 15 days. And over when I've had a DOL audit with my clients, they continue to get penalized, even though they wrote it's 15 days. So at the end of the day, you can fight with your governor or with the DOL head, but the reality is you're going to get your bottom in trouble if you're literally looking at what they said. So the fact that this is getting done, I rather have it done in a reasonable, fast way. And then if you have issues, there's nothing wrong with that. If there's an issue, you can always fix it. There's millions of ways to Sunday to fix something. There really is. And believe me, you will catch them. It'll come around. It may not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but it's a lot easier to fix a mistake than never did it the right way. You can always say, whoops, I'm sorry, but you can never say, oh, I didn't do it on time. Just a thought.
Yep. Fantastic points, and even to take it a step further, I know that our system, when we receive these payroll data files, that there's a second degree or a second level of data verification that we do. We look for, things like missing employee census data. If we get an employee without a date of birth, we're going to flag that and say, hey, we need a date of birth here. It's critical. Or a lot of times, clients might do a corrective payroll, or they might be, working on correcting a specific employee's paycheck. We might get a negative contribution amount, which is okay as long as it doesn't exceed a participant's account balance. Or we might get a negative loan payment. A negative loan payment is going to stop a transaction because you can't have a negative loan payment, right? That's actually extending credit,
That's
to
right.
someone. But again, I know all the record keepers are built a little differently, but there are second levels of data verification, built into that process. But well, look, continuing on, the next level of integration is a bidirectional exchange, or what the industry refers to as a 360-degree integration. And what this integration does is it removes a key critical manual task to all of this data exchange that many people without an integration, you're having to do this today. And that is when your participants go to your record keeper's website and maybe they enroll for the first time and they choose a contribution rate, or they change a contribution rate, or they drop out of the plan, or maybe they go to zero, or they take a loan, or there's an auto escalation. Maybe it's once a year for all of your employees. I've seen recently where clients are doing auto enrollment or auto re-enrollment campaigns for people who have elected zero previously, but they kind of get them back into the plan again. Well, those all create some type of impact back in payroll. And without an integration, someone in your HR department or a designated administrator is having to pull reports from your record keeper's website. And we at Transamerica produce all these same reports, but they're typically looking at a contribution rate change report, where they can find all of the changes, within a certain time period or a pay period, post those back into payroll. And they're also looking for any type of new loans that were generated, so they can post a new loan payment, if there was a loan refinanced, if there was a loan payoff. Those will, again, all have an impact back in payroll. So with a 360-degree integration, this covers everything we just spent about 10 minutes talking about with the 180, but it adds the additional integration or the additional secure file feed from the record keeper back into your payroll software or your payroll vendor's environment. And again, it will post those changes back in payroll so that no one is having to pull these reports and manually key these changes back in payroll. And the key word there is manually. You just want to avoid all that manual keying of data. Very easy to make a mistake and not catch it until 2 or 3 pay periods. And as we know, most employees are not very diligent about looking at their pay slip every pay period. They might look at it once every 2 or 3 months. I know that's the case with me. So it's probably going to take a little while before I catch an error like that, that might pop up in payroll. But again, it's one of those steps where we can remove the human element and remove the opportunity for an error being keyed back into payroll. I will say, in my experience working with a lot of payroll providers, and payroll software platforms, there is some of these providers do have the ability for you to have a window of opportunity to view that data before it's uploaded or updated within your payroll environment. So you'd want to check with your payroll vendor about that specifically. I know I'm not going to mention specific names today, but I know many of them that are quite capable of that. Some clients choose to have that opportunity and some don't. But anyway, I think we've kind of covered most of these key points about the the automation of the movement, the reduction of errors. But for clients that are looking for the most hands-off experience in relaying this data back and forth, a 360 integration is certainly the level of integration that's going to give you that. So this next piece, this is a sample list of payroll providers, and I'm going to speak in Transamerica terms here for just a second. And I realize not everybody with us today is a Transamerica client, but this is a sample list of payroll providers that we have some type of pre-configured data exchange with currently. And in the case of our platform, we add new payroll providers, 2 to 3 about every month. So it's growing very rapidly. But if you look at this list, you're going to see a lot of the major names that I would suspect that many people present here today are using. If you're using a payroll processor, the typical mid-market folks, the Paylocities, Paycor, ADP, Paychex, Proliant, a lot of great companies out there. I'm just kind of rattling off a few of them. Paycom.
And I would like to make a comment on that. Sometimes you will have the payroll company be your TPA. Remember, those are large companies. And as much as I love working with them, which I do, nothing is automatic. Just because you have the same company doing it, you have to take the step to say, hey, I need to have this program. I need to have this 360. I need to have this 180, because you're sold on something when you first sign up with people, and not always you realize that it's available. It's just you're not using everything. You know, it's like Maria and all of her electronic stuff in the computer. I have every single program, but does Maria know how to use the best of it? I literally had to get out of my Teams because poor Jill couldn't even tell me how I could turn it off. So a lot of us could be Marias, where we know enough, but it could be so much more. We just don't know it's there. And it just takes that education, that push on your side. There will be other people that are not sitting here on this thing that says, oh, that's not going to work. I'm here to tell you it will work. You just have to get it. You have to just make it happen. And sometimes that's the bad thing, is like, sometimes I find life just being sometimes inconvenient. You know, that's just what life is. I tell that to my children all the time. Yeah, I get you. Sometimes this stuff is inconvenient, but if you just get through it and you work through it, at the end, you will find that yellow brick road. You really will. It's just that it takes a lot of gumption to move it through. You know, it is what it is. I'm the first one to tell you, sometimes I just like, no, I don't have it in me. And some days I'm like, oh no, that's going to happen. Now, if you talk to my staff, and my staff was probably listening, they're all laughing, just so you know. I can tell you that right now. It's like, oh no, here comes Maria pushing something. Anyway, sorry, Dave.
No
You just
worries.
made terrific points, and I agree with all of them.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, look, just to wrap up a couple of points about these payroll providers. You know, the mid-market, a lot of the names that I just mentioned, more and more clients we see, you know, especially as they grow and they're hitting that enterprise level, we see a lot of migration toward, you know, platforms like Workday, which are more software-based, UKG Pro, or the former, you know, Ultimate Software. And all of these firms are capable of producing integrations, and in most cases having a high quality 360 integration. The emerging market out there that I'm seeing, when I say emerging, there's a new market of vendors out there, and these are actually third-party integration providers. Excuse me.
Oh, good point.
So these are firms actually that sit between payroll vendors and retirement plan providers like Transamerica, and they act as an adapter or a clearinghouse of data. So there's a couple names on this list. There's one firm called PayConnect. I, you know, would believe that most people have not heard of a PayConnect. There's another firm, it's kind of a generic name, but they're a high quality firm called Payroll Integrations.
Yes.
And in many cases, they can actually plug into some of these payroll platforms through their API and facilitate the exchange of data more efficiently and at a lower cost than just going straight to your payroll provider. So I guess with all that said, if you're tempted to explore your integration opportunities or your you know, your options out there, it might be worth considering or having some dialogue, you know, with your providers around third parties that might be able to plug in.
David, that is such a very good point, because sometimes, let's say, even though, let's say you have a plan that needs to be audited, but the reality is you only have 20 people that are part of the plan. So you have a really small amount of assets. When your assets are less than $1 million or even 500,000 or something, you're probably in the lowest platform that you can be when it comes to your payroll provider. And it depends what platform you're in. That's a terminology I just learned a few years ago, to say, oh, you can do it, but I'm in the lower platform because I'm not paying that much, or maybe, in fact, I may be paying even more, but because I'm so small amount in assets, I'm not getting all of the bells and whistles. This is where an intermediary, like you're talking about, David, could come in, because maybe to go into a higher platform is not financially feasible for the company right now. and you're saying, okay, well, what about if I just do it for a couple bucks a month versus doing it for an additional $200 a month to get to the higher platform? That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought it up because that seems to be also a rubbing point.
For sure, and in some of these cases, maybe going to the payroll provider direct, and I'll throw out one name like Paycom. They will do a one-way or a 180 integration direct with Paycom, but by going through a third-party integrator, I can actually get a full 360 integration set up for our mutual clients. So,
Yes.
They can usually elevate that level of service.
Yes, because it isn't always, oh, I'm going to change my payroll company. We all know that's a nightmare. So make that the last step in your to-do, because that is, and I totally get it. It's a tough change. There's no doubt. It's like changing, I laugh about it. It's like changing your bank.
Right.
It's like, do I really want to do this? But and every banker will go, oh, it's okay. It's going to be really easy, super easy. And it's like, oh, do I have to? It's hard.
Absolutely. Well, look, you might be asking yourself if you may have some level of integration set up, or maybe you want to explore this. Where do I go to initiate this process? Who should I reach out to? I would tell you two places to start. I would certainly reach out to your current retirement plan providers. So if you're working with a TPA, that's a good place to start. Certainly your record keeper would have a good idea about what type of integrations are available with them. I'm going to give a shameless plug for Transamerica. We would certainly be open and very happy to have a conversation with you around that, either Chris Castro or myself. But also it's important to engage your payroll vendor, because they're a key party here. And I've seen some clients say, oh, well, hey, Transamerica set it up for me, and not thinking that they needed to engage their payroll vendor. But typically, both providers are going to have some type of service agreement that they would want you to execute with them, just authorizing them to exchange this data on your behalf. So they're usually going to want that. I know in the case of Transamerica, we do not charge a fee for our integrations coming into or out of Transamerica. It is typical that some payroll vendors may choose to charge a fee. So again, you would want to vet that out. Is there a setup cost? Is there an ongoing cost? What is that? To try to get a reasonable idea about what the expense would be ongoing. And then certainly, there's some third parties out there, and I would typically lean toward a record keeper or a TPA probably having knowledge about where a third party might be able to step in and offer you some level of integration there. So anyway, good places to start. And I think hopefully you're loaded with some good key questions to ask. But on that, why don't we jump to our Q&A panel here, and we'll see if there's anything out there. And I guess I would just invite anyone on the webinar today, if you have any questions, or if you have any thoughts about what you might like to ask us while we're live here today, please type it into the Q&A chat. Looks like there's a couple of them out there. So the first one is, how long does the whole process take to set up and implement? So I would assume that would be for an integration. And what I would tell you is that it's going to vary a little bit based on typically your payroll vendor or your payroll software. So I have seen integrations take anywhere from literally less than a week to set up, as with the case of some of these third-party integrators, like this payroll integrations firm I mentioned. Very fast, very fluid, electronic connections to the payroll environment, about a week. So it's very, very fast. If you are operating on a software platform like a Workday or a UKG Pro, I would lean more toward the, by the time they scope the work out and they get the right developers involved, I'm going to lean more toward the 12-week type of time frame as a typical average. I think the obvious follow-up question there is, what does a typical integration cost? What does it cost me to set it up? What does it cost me to maintain it if I'm interested in setting up an integration? So I'm going to give you kind of a blanket. This is broad. Depending on your payroll provider and depending upon your value to them, I've seen some payroll providers offer this integration and set it up and do it for no charge. So no charge does exist out there in the industry. I think you get to a middle tier, where there's going to be some type of setup fee, usually in the hundreds of dollars. and then some type of ongoing fee. A lot of payroll firms like to charge maybe a per file fee or a per payroll process type of fee. Some payroll providers may want to charge you a small fee on a per employee per month. Seems like the payroll industry likes to charge, as they call it, PEPM, per employee per month. Could be 50 cents, could be something of that nature. And then when you get into the higher end, the software, most of the fee is really on the implementation. So it's the setup, it's getting the developers in there to install the integration, set it up. They're going to spend ample time testing to make sure the data feeds work correctly. All the data is being transferred accurately back and forth. But then the ongoing expense is negligible, if anything. So, you know, in those cases, I'm sure if you're operating on a Workday or UKG Pro or something like that, you're probably pretty familiar with what it takes to get your developers involved, or a certified consultant to come in and help you with that type of software configuration. But all great questions out there. Thank you so much for posing those.
David, you did a beautiful job. Thank you so much. I learned something, and that's really important. Absolutely.
Yes,
Well,
someone else just emailed me, can I get a link to the recording? And yes, absolutely. We will send all of you a link to the recording and the slides later this afternoon.
Okay.
So thank you so much, David and Chris, for being with us. And Maria, you're always the most gracious hostess for us. So we appreciate so much all of you taking the time to be with us this morning. On the screen here, you have contact information for all the presenters, and you'll also get that emailed to you later today. So please feel free to reach out to any of them if you have any questions. This is really an evolving service, and we'd love to see how our team and Transamerica can help you with it. And with that, we're going to thank you and let you go. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thanks,
we'll see you
everybody.
next time.
Thank you,
Bye
everyone.
now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.